my name's Katie and I make book-related videos every single Wednesday, and today I'm so excited because this is just my favorite time of year when it comes to being part of BookTube, and that is because everybody's posting their favorite and least favorite books of the year. Normally I split this up into 2 videos, but I only actually had 2 or 3 books that I really hated, so I figured I would just throw them in this video. But before I get into those, you guys know if you've been watching me for a while, once a year I like to do a Q&A video because as much as I love watching booktubers talk about books, I'm also a creep who just wants to know everything about everyone. So although I don't think I'm one of the most interesting people in the world at all, since I love watching those videos so much, I do like to film one of these about once a year. So if you do have any questions, whether it be about like my personal life, work life, booktube, books in general, any of that kind of stuff, feel free to comment them down below. No question is too personal. If I think it's too personal, I just won't answer it. So now let's go ahead and get into my least favorite books of 2017 so that we can end this video on a positive note. So like I said, for my least favorite books, I really only have 2 that I strongly disliked. And the first one was a very recent review, and that was Artemis. And as I go through all of the books I'm talking about, I generally have singular, spoiler-free review videos on all of them, so I'll have those linked above. Artemis for me was easily the most boring and tedious book I read in all of 2017, and it also had the protagonist that I despise the most. Realistically, I probably read, if I'm being 100% honest, 90% of this book, and that's not because I got 90% of the way and then just stopped reading. I was so bored that there were instances where my eyes would glaze over and I'm positive I missed a sentence or 2 here and there. And the next book I had no fun with at all was The Couple Next Door. This was a big thriller that came out, and it was either 2016 or 2017. The premise of this and the protagonist's actions, or I should say one of the main character's actions, just made absolutely no sense. This is more or less about a baby that goes missing while 2 couples are having a dinner party, and it was ludicrous, and not ludicrous in like, oh, this is zany, crazy, out there fun. It was ludicrous like the book was trying to be smart, but in reality I felt was just being fairly dumb. So now we are going to get into my favorite books. I did try and cut it down to 5, but I just snuck another one in there and I have 6, and these are in no particular order. So one of my top books, and I just hate myself for pushing off reading this for so long because I've seen so many glowing reviews of this, and the hype is definitely real for this book and warranted, and that is Everything I Never Told You. This takes place in, I think it's the 1970s, and a Chinese American teenager is found dead in the lake. And one thing I would say if you're going into reading this is much more of a story about family, and it's very depressing, than it is a story about a mystery. This isn't a book with like tons and twists and turns and a thriller where you're trying to figure out why and how someone died. That's not what this is, and I think if you go in expecting that, you might be a little let down. But it really is a story about family that, like I said, very sad, but it just tugs and punches at your heart. But her writing style is so beautiful, so if you've heard people say they recommend this, the hype is real, please go ahead and read it. The next book is Parable of the Sower, and I haven't heard a lot of people talk about this book, although that's probably because it's been out for quite a while. This is kind of a light science fiction, not light meaning that it's like a light fun read, because it is quite dark. Light in the sense that there is science fiction in this, sense that Lauren, our protagonist, is able to feel the pain of others. However, it is light on that science fiction aspect, and this book absolutely blew me away. When I say it's a dystopian, this isn't like your typical, I feel like, young adult dystopian at all. The writing is just absolutely beautiful, and I can totally see why a lot of people consider this a classic. When it's describing how the world is falling apart, it felt so realistic, and this is set in the 2020s, so you know, not too far around the corner. But if you are in the mood for a little bit of sci-fi and just a beautifully written dystopian, because maybe you're sick of being let down by a lot of cheesy dystopians, then definitely check that out. And for one of my other favorites, this is my main thriller favorite, and that is Still House Late. Now I read this a couple months back, and I was so surprised by how fun this was. Now in comparison to say like Parable and Everything I Never Told You, the writing of this book, although solid and good, it's not, you know, literary fiction, it's not lyrical, and I think that's fine for the purpose of what it is. But this is a really cool concept where at the beginning of the book, this isn't a spoiler, it happens in the first like 2 pages, a woman finds out that her husband is a serial killer, and then it jumps forward a number of years when she is trying to kind of still remain in hiding with her 2 children, and this book was just so fast-paced, so fun. I feel like there's a fine line with thrillers where some are just like fast-paced and fun with like no heart and the writing's terrible, and this was just such a solid fast-paced fun one. How many times can I say that? But if you've been reading books like say The Couple Next Door that have been hyped up a lot on places like Goodreads and you're coming away let down by them, I just love Stillhouse Lake so much. Our protagonist, the mother, is just so badass. You really root for her, so really can't recommend that one enough. And the next book, it feels like I read this 5 years ago. I couldn't believe it was 2017 when I read that, and that is Cold Moon Over Babylon by Michael McDowell. And I have to say first, whenever it comes to Michael McDowell's books, I really recommend listening to the audiobook. The same goes for The Elementals, which was one of my favorite books of 2016. Michael McDowell wrote a lot of Southern Gothic horror in, I want to say it was the 70s or 80s. He passed away a number of years ago, unfortunately. I'll be honest, I feel the need to push Michael McDowell on anybody who is a horror lover, only because I feel like he unfortunately passed away before people were really aware of how beautiful his writing is. Again, if you don't like horror, I don't think you're gonna like this. And I have to say, this isn't the type of book where there are like 5 twists. It's basically about a young girl who's murdered in a small town, and you find out who the killer is fairly early on. So it's not like a mystery in that sense. It's just some true Gothic horror. And if you're in the mood for some horror, definitely check out one of the audiobooks. You know how I was just saying that I had 6 and I was trying to cut it down to 5? Well, that's gonna be easy because I just noticed I have Everything I Never Told You on here twice. So I thought I had 2 more to talk about, but my final favorite book of 2017, and this is gonna be no shock to any of you, and that is Big Little Lies. Now I know some of you guys might be sick of hearing about this book because it's maybe not been talked a ton about on BookTube, but just outside of BookTube, people have been talking about Big Little Lies a ton, especially because of the show. But believe me when I say that all the hype around this book is super worth it. I have not heard of a single person who read this and who was like, meh, it's fine. This follows primarily 3 mothers in Australia. The TV show is set in California, but the book is in Australia, and it mainly follows their lives and all of the shit that is happening in them, but it's so smart and funny and fast-paced, and the writing is fantastic. I'm not gonna say any more about that because I have a review on it, and I'm sure you guys have already heard a ton about it, but the show was also amazing. So read the book, then watch the show, because there's some surprises that happen in the show that in my opinion were handled a little bit better in the book. So those were my top 5 books of 2017. Please let me know what your favorite books were, especially ones that I haven't read maybe that you think I should read in 2018. And again, I'm gonna film a Q&A video, so please let me know any questions you guys have below. I hope you guys had a wonderful new year, and I will see you guys next Wednesday. Bye.